Hey there, Jordan Sheridan live, Status Coup. Sorry we're a bit late. There are a lot of clips from that press conference that we were going through, and I wanted to make sure we had all the necessary clips. Please share this live stream. Please smash the like button. Get this out to as many people as possible. Share this live stream. There is a lot to discuss, and from what I could see, either the Texas Department of Public Safety spokesperson that was just speaking at this press conference, he was intentionally lying, or they still don't have their story straight. Because watching that press conference, he contradicted himself at least 3 times, that by my count. And there's a lot there. So I just want to wait a little bit for as many people as possible to tune in, because it's important to play the clips in the order to show the contradictions. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the Texas Department of Public Safety just held a press conference. In the press conference, they went through the timeline of not only the shooter, and messages he posted on social media, which in one case, he said 10 days, he said 10 days before the shooting. So the shooter teased that he was going to do something in 10 days. But also, they went through the timeline of 911 calls that were coming in during the shooting. So there's a lot to discuss, but there's a specific point where either the spokesperson that spoke is lying, or he's just contradicting himself and doesn't have his story straight. From looking at it, and then looking at some reporting that's come out from the New York Times, it seems to be they're lying, because there is a key point specifically on the Border Patrol. The Border Patrol, which ultimately ended up killing the shooter. There's a key point about when the Border Patrol arrived, including the Border Patrol that has the specialized equipment that they said they needed to barge through the door because the shooter had locked the door. So there's key contradictions specifically about the Border Control that we're going to get into. Please smash the like button, share this live stream. Very important to get this out to as many people as possible. So I want to start at the beginning. The spokesperson went through the timeline of when the shooter first went through the door, which was unlocked. It's supposed to be locked, but it was unlocked. When the shooter first went in the door, and how many rounds he got off at first. Because I think it's important to state that, by all accounts, the majority of the killings of these 19 children, or the majority of the initial children shot, happened right away. So let's play this clip from the Department of the spokesperson for the Texas Department of Public Safety, because I think it will show you that the NRA and others are going to make this about the police badly messed this up. The police badly messed this up. The good guys with a gun messed up. When in fact, they certainly did mess up. But the majority of the majority of the children that were shot, whether they died right away or not, happened right away because he went in there with an AR-15 with 375 rounds. Let's play the beginning of the timeline.
Camera view, there was multiple shots fired at the school at 11:32, at 11:32:27, at 11:32:36. At 11:33 is when the suspect entered the school at the door that I'm pointing to now. At 11:33, the suspect began shooting into room 111 or 112. It's not possible to determine from the video angle that we have at this point in time. We do know this, that he shot more than 100 rounds based on the audio evidence at that time, at least 100 rounds. He entered at 11:33, or 11:33, he started shooting in the classrooms, 111 and 112. And 11:35, 3 police officers entered the same door as the suspect entered, All three of those police officers worked for the Uvalde Police Department. They were later followed by another a team of Uvalde police officers, 3, and also a county deputy sheriff. So a total of 7 officers were on the scene. The 3 initial police officers that arrived went directly to the door, and 2 received grazing wounds at that time from the suspect while the door was closed. At 11:37, there was more gunfire. Another 16 rounds was fired at 11:37. One at 11:37 and 16 seconds, 11:38, 11:40, 11:44. At 11:51, a police sergeant and USB agents started to arrive. At 12:03, officers continued to arrive in the hallway, and there were as many as 19 officers at that time in that hallway. At 12:15, we know that BORTAC members arrived. Not the entire BORTAC, but members of BORTAC, along with Shields. At 12:21, the suspect fired again, was believed to be at the door.
You can come out. So, very important there. That spokesperson said at 12:15, the Border Patrol, BORTAC, at 12:15, the Border Patrol showed up. Okay? That's important because let me show you this New York Times article. A Border Patrol tactical team was ordered to hold back before confronting the gunman. When specially equipped federal immigration agents arrived at the elementary school in Uvalde, the local police at the scene would not allow them to go after the gunman who had opened fire on students. So we're going to go back to that. But very important to note, he just said at 12:15, the Border Patrol arrived. So jot that down, 12:15. I also want to point out, because again, the NRA, Republicans, Fox News are going to try and make this about the police messed up. Failure on the police, or the door was unlocked, and all these things. They're going to try and distract as much as they can from the bazooka gun. Literally within 2 minutes of the shooter getting into that classroom, he fired off 100 rounds. You could do that because he had an AR-15 with a high capacity magazine. So to be clear, although the police clearly messed up, and what I'm about to show you, it seems they're lying about the timeline and their actions. Make no mistake, it's not only because the police messed up that 19 children are dead. He was able to fire 100 rounds almost immediately. It's the gun. It's the guns. All right. So we've just established that the NRA, the Texas public safety official says the Border Patrol shows up at 12:15. All right. Let's play the second clip.
The Border Patrol agents, the BORTAC agents that were in the building, did line up. They're part of the 19 that I talked about, and the entry team, ultimately the entry team that went in. But I can tell you that they were told, just as any other officer was told, and others, even command staff that came on board, is that the incident commander at the time it's believed that in fact it was a barricaded subject, that we had time, there was no kids at risk.
Well, how can that be? How could, in one breath, he's saying the shooter goes in at 11:33. This is Central Time, by the way. So the shooter goes in, he's saying at 11:33. He's saying that the first clip, he says the Border Patrol didn't show up till 12:15. But then in the next breath, he's saying, as part of the 19 officers that officially went in almost immediately, so we're talking between 11:30 and 11:40, Border Patrol agents were part of that 19. So which one is it? I mean, 11:33 and 12:15, that's about 45 minutes. So the first clip, he says Border Patrol, who has specialized equipment that he said they were waiting on, specialized equipment presumably to get through that door that the shooter had locked himself in the door. They say he showed up. They say that initially they say Border Patrol showed up at 12:15, but then he says Border Patrol was part of the initial 19 that went in, I think between 11:30 and 11:40. Well, either he's lying or he's contradicting himself. I want to play that one more time, Colin, the part where he says Border Patrol was part of the initial 19.
The Border Patrol agents, the BORTAC agents that were in the building, did line up. They're part of the 19 that I talked about, and the entry team, ultimately the entry team that went in. But I can tell you that they were told, just as any other officer was told, and others, even command staff that came on board, is that the incident commander at the time it's believed that in fact it was a barricaded subject, that we had time, there was no kids at risk.
Okay, so Border Patrol, first statement, Border Patrol showed up at 12:15. That would be about 45 minutes after this shooter started shooting. Then he says Border Patrol was part of the initial group of 19 officers that went in right after the shooter started shooting. So that would be sometime between 11:30 and 11:45. 11:30 and 11:40. So that's a 45-minute discrepancy. Next clip.
In there, in fact, there was plenty of officers to do whatever needed to be done, with one exception, is that the incident commander inside believed they needed more equipment and more officers to do a tactical breach at that point. That's why BORTAC was requested on the scene. As soon as they were there, they executed, they searched, or at least a dynamic entry, and went in, and of course, that was not till 12:57.
What? This guy's all over the place. First statement. He says Border Patrol was there at 12:15, which is 45 minutes after the shooter started shooting. The second statement, Border Patrol was part of the initial group of 19 officers that went in between 11:30 and 11:40. Well, how can that be? Did they get there at 12:15, which would have been 45 minutes after the shooter started shooting? Did they go in immediately with other local officers? And in this third clip, play that one more time.
There was 19, like I said, there was 19 officers in there. In fact, there was plenty of officers to do whatever needed to be done, with one exception, is that the incident commander inside believed they needed more equipment and more officers to do a tactical breach at that point. That's why BORTAC was requested on the scene. As soon as they were there, they executed, they searched, or at least a dynamic entry, and went in, and of course, that was not till 12:57. The question simply.
So he's saying that's why BORTAC, the Border Patrol, was requested. But wait a minute. You said Border Patrol was part of the 19 officers that initially went in right away. So again, either he's lying or he can't get his story straight. And why the specifics? And I mean, I don't have a TV in front of me, but I didn't see CNN point this out. I didn't see any outlets point this out. Why this is important with the timing of the Border Patrol, who I believe has the specialized equipment to at least make an effort to barge through that door, because the gunman had locked himself in with the students in two classrooms that were connected. Let me read the New York Times for you. A Border Patrol tactical team was ordered to hold back before confronting the gunman. When specially equipped federal immigration agents arrived at the elementary school in Uvalde, Texas on Tuesday, the local police at the scene would not allow them to go after the gunman who had opened fire on students inside the school, according to two officials briefed on the situation. The agents from Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrived at some point between 12 and 12:10, according to the officials, far earlier than previously known. But they did not breach the adjoining classrooms of the school where the gunman had locked himself in until a little before 1 p.m. Members of the federal tactical team killed the gunman. So this spokesperson said members of the Border Patrol were part of the initial 19 officers that went in. But then he says, we were waiting for Border Patrol, who has specialized equipment. And according to the New York Times, who's usually right, as not on everything, not on a lot of things, but on these things, they have good sources. Border Patrol wasn't there until 12, between 12 and 12:10. So he's either lying or he can't get his story straight. Let's keep reading. The officials said that members of the Uvalde Police Department kept the federal agents from going in sooner. The new details deepen questions about the tactics used to respond to the shooting and the length of time it took officers on the scene to end the carnage. The director of the Texas Department of Public Safety was expected to hold a press conference, which I just showed you some of it. The federal agents reported that they arrived to a scene of chaos, people pulling children out of windows while the local police, carrying only handguns and a few rifles, were trying to secure a perimeter, according to one official, who, like the others, spoke on the condition of anonymity. The Border Patrol and ICE agents did not understand why they were left to wait, according to the official. Eventually, the specialized Border Patrol team went into the building. Again, this spokesperson said that the Border Patrol agents, who are specialized and have equipment, was part of the initial 19 officials that went in. But then he said, we were waiting for Border Patrol to come. And then he said, basically, as soon as they came, they, barged in through the door at 12:57. There is an hour discrepancy between what he's saying and what happened. Texas law enforcement officials have said that the government was locked in a pair of adjoining classrooms and already shot a number of students there in the first few minutes. With him pinned down there, they said local police initially focused on evacuating students and teachers from elsewhere in the school. Law enforcement officers had initially tried to enter the classroom but fell back after the gunman fired on them, injuring 2 officers, state law enforcement officials said. Most, if not all, of the 21 victims of the attack, including 19 students and 2 teachers, died in the area where the gunman, identified as Salvador Ramos, had locked himself in. The gunman was fatally shot by the federal team that entered the rooms more than an hour after the initial 911 call of a man with a gun outside the school came in at 11:30. The federal officers had driven up from the Mexico border, one official said. The official said it was not clear to the federal agents why their team was needed and why the local SWAT team did not respond. So, bottom line, this spokesperson basically contradicted himself 3 or 4 times. First, he said Border Patrol was part of the initial 19 officers that went in, but the commanding officer, who was a local Uvalde officer, had made the determination that it was no longer an active shooting, and instead it was a suspect barricaded in. And the difference between that is if it's no longer an active shooting and it's just the suspect has barricaded himself in, the thought is there are currently no lives at risk, which is absolutely batshit, which this spokesperson later admitted, because even if the shooter is no longer actively shooting, you could have children who have been shot bleeding out. So the time to go at him is then. Even if you don't hear any more shots, this and that, you could have children whose lives can be saved if you get in there, shoot the suspect, kill him, and get to those kids. But the commanding officer had made a fatally wrong determination that it was no longer an active shooting and it was just the suspect barricaded in. Now, again, this officer is contradicting himself 3 times because he says that the Border Patrol was part of the initial unit that went in of 19 officers right away. So between 11:33 and 11:40. Then he says they showed up around 12:15, even though the New York Times reports they showed up between 12 and 12:10. Then he says we had 19 officers, but we were waiting on the Border Patrol. Now, so either the Border Patrol was there right away and had the specialized equipment, but the commanding officer would not let them go in and try to barge through that door, or the Border Patrol came later and he's lying that the Border Patrol was there right away. Now, moving on, you have the 911 calls. Colin, can we play him going through the timeline of the 911 calls?
19 officers gathered in the hallway or somewhere. What efforts were made to try and break through that door? You say it was locked. What efforts were the officers making to try and break through either that door or another door to get inside that classroom?
None at that time. The on-scene commander at the time believed that it had transitioned from an active shooter to a barricaded subject.
You have people who are alive, children who are calling 911 saying, please send the police. They are alive in that classroom. There are lives that are at risk.
Hey,
That's not protocol, is it?
We're well aware of that.
Right, but why was this decision made not to go in and rescue these children?
Again, you know, the on-scene commander considered it a barricaded subject and that there was time and there were no more children at risk. Obviously, you know, based upon the information we have, there were children in that classroom that were at risk, and it was, in fact, still an active shooter situation and not a barricaded subject.
So we're gonna get to the timeline of the 911 calls, but first of all, we've already established that either they're lying or they don't know their head from their ass as far as when the Border Patrol showed up that had the specialized equipment to try and barge through that door because the shooter had locked himself into the door. We also know that the commanding officer wrongly determined that it was no longer an active shooting. Even if you're not hearing shots anymore, you have no idea, are all the students already dead? Are there some that have been shot but are still alive? And if you get there in time and get them to the hospital, maybe you could save lives. So I don't really, you know, they didn't give the commanding officer's name. They didn't, he wasn't there. The police chief wasn't there, probably because this is the Super Bowl of fuck ups and they don't want to put this cop's name out there or make him available to the press. But I mean, I'm not a law enforcement expert, but looking and hearing some of them on TV, this should have always been an active shooter situation, even if you are not currently hearing shots. We also know, and we're going to play this in a bit, that, I mean, literally there's people with the Uvalde police and Texas public safety that actually, let's play it. This is the media clip where a Texas cop is basically saying part of their determination of not barging in was essentially they were afraid to get shot. Let's play that.
Do you believe, Lieutenant, for the officers on the scene who were there, as you correctly point out, to wait for this second tactical team to arrive before fully pushing into that school and neutralizing the gunman?
So what we do know, Wolf, is that there was multiple officers that arrived on scene. There was 3 officers that arrived that made entry at one of the entrances where the gunman actually made entrance to. We had another 4 officers that made entry at the other entrance of the school. So there was officers inside that school. As they were taking gunfire, they were also calling in for reinforcement, backup, tactical teams, snipers, any additional personnel that could arrive to assist to not only with the situation, but also to assist in evacuating students and teachers. At that time, that's when a U.S. Border Patrol tactical officer arrived, also with a Zavala County Sheriff's deputy, as well as 2 additional Uvalde Police Department officers were able to go into that classroom with a ballistic shield as cover. And of course, we know that.
So again, here's another one contradicting. The Texas Department of Public Safety spokesperson says Border Patrol was part of the initial 19 that went in. This guy is saying, oh, they were waiting on a tactical team to show up from Border Patrol. Well, it can't be both. Either Border Patrol was there right away as part of the 19 officers that went in, and they had the tactical equipment that could have immediately been working to break through that door, or they were waiting on Border Patrol to show up. But there is contradictions all over the place. Keep going with that clip.
One of those officers, an agent, actually was shot, was grazed at the top of the head, but they were able to shoot and kill the suspect and preserve any other life. We know that there was other injured children inside that classroom that they were able to save as well and get them to cover. And at that point, it became a recovery process, a rescue operation, trying to rescue the injured and also any other potential children or teachers that were inside those classrooms.
But don't current best practices, Lieutenant, call for officers to disable a shooter as quickly as possible, regardless of how many officers are actually on site.
Correct. The active shooter situation, you want to stop the killing, you want to preserve life, but also one thing that, of course, the American people need to understand is that officers are making entry into this building. They do not know where the gunman is. They are hearing gunshots. They are receiving gunshots. At that point, if they proceeded any further, not knowing where this suspect was at, they could have been shot. They could have been killed. And at that point, that gunman would have the opportunity to kill other people inside that school. So they were able to contain that gunman inside that classroom so that he was not able to go to any other portions of the school to commit any other killings.
Yeah. So let me get this straight. If the officers get shot and killed, that would allow the gunman to kill more people. If the officers don't get shot and they don't get killed, then the gunman can't kill more people. That's what that guy is saying. Basically, the officers were trying to not get shot and killed, because if they got shot and killed, then the gunman has opportunity to kill more people. The gunman's barricaded into 2 classrooms. The more time you leave the gunman alive, the more time there is for him to kill more students. It is asinine what that officer just said. Essentially, the truth is, and we saw it from clips of officers outside the building as parents, desperate parents, were pleading with them to go in. They were afraid to get shot. Listen, I would be afraid to be shot. That's why I'm not a police officer. But he's basically giving it away that they didn't barge in because they were afraid to get shot and killed. Then you shouldn't be a police officer. There's no other way to say it. You shouldn't be a police officer. And by the way, this completely breaks open, the whole NRA. We need more good guys with a gun. This isn't a fucking Western shootout at the OK Corral. Good guys with a gun. You had a lot of good guys with a gun who sat in fetal position, basically. But it makes zero sense what he's saying. You cannot say, well, if we would have risked our lives and got shot and killed, that would have given the shooter, who already fired 100 rounds in the first 2 minutes of being inside the classroom, it would have given him more opportunity to kill more people. No, not killing, not neutralizing the shooter and getting him and killing him. That's giving him more opportunity to kill more people. Colin, let's play the timeline of the 911 calls next.
The caller identified, I'll not say her name, but she was in room 112, called 911 at 12:03. The duration of the call was 1 minute and 23 seconds. She identified herself and whispered she's in room 112. At 12:10, she called back. In room 12, advised there were multiple dead. 12:13, again, she called on the phone. Again at 12:16, she called back and said there was 8 to 9 students alive. At 12:19, the 911 call was made, and another person in room 111 called. I will not say her name. She hung up when another student told her to hang up. At 12:21, you could hear over the 911 call that 3 shots were fired. At 12:36, 911 call, it lasted for 21 seconds. The initial caller called back, student, child, called back, and was told to stay on the line and be very quiet. She told 911 that he shot the door. At approximately 12:43 and 12:47, she asked 911 to please send the police now. At 12:46, she said that she could hear the police next door. At 12:50, shots are fired. They can be heard over the 911 call. And at 12:51 is very loud and sounds like the officers are moving children out of the room. At that time, the first child that called was outside before the call cuts off.
How does the commanding officer make the determination that it's no longer an active shooter? It's a suspect that has barricaded himself in, and at the moment, no more lives are at risk. If you have several 911 calls coming in describing people or students still alive, when the 911 call, you could hear more shots being fired. If you could hear more shots being fired on the 911 call, don't you think the 19 officers that are in the school can hear AR-15 gunfire in real time? If you can hear it on the 911 call, I promise you, the officers, the good guys with a gun, could hear it in the school. But still, they did not do anything to barge through the door. And by the way, the active shooter protocol, even if you don't have the right equipment, even if you don't have the necessary backup, is to engage the shooter. It's to engage the shooter. And what that means is start shooting into that door. Start shooting into that door. Because even if you're not going to, even if it's not going to hit the shooter, the goal is, this is according to the active shooter protocol, to engage the shooter, taking him away from actively shooting victims. So there's multiple 911 calls coming in. There is communication when the 911 calls are coming in. Those 911 operators, you better be damn sure they're communicating, or supposed to be communicating, with the officers on the ground. You have dispatch, all that. But yet the commanding officer doesn't know. He still thinks it's not an active shooter. I'm not going to speculate. I know there's speculation going on the internet. I mean, the only thing that makes sense why they would so badly get this wrong, thinking that this was no longer an active shooting, is if the cops accidentally had shot children. Like, to be clear, that's just speculation, no reporting or information on that. But clearly, you cannot mistake hearing gunfire, having 911 calls coming in saying there are children alive, as it's no longer an active shooter situation. Secondly, even if you're not hearing shots, you certainly heard the opening barrage of shots. So you cannot assume, you have to assume that there are children that have been shot and might be bleeding out. So every second counts in order to neutralize that shooter, shoot him, get in there, and potentially save lives that if you get them to the hospital, potentially you could be saving lives, even one life. Let's play the next clip.
The caller.
Here, by 12:15, you had at least 15 officers and shields on scene.
Yeah.
Yet you did not reach the door until 12:50.
Okay, like I've said it before, is that, well, first of all, when it comes to an active shooter, is you don't have to wait on tactical gear. Plain and simple, you've got an obligation. What I know now, okay, absolutely, it was an active shooter, because you can transition. Keep in mind, in the doctrine, okay, of active shooters, you can transition from an alert, from an active shooter situation to a barricaded subject or a barricaded with hostage subject. But if shooting continues, and you have any reason to believe that there's individuals alive in there, you've got an obligation to move back to an active shooter posture, and that means everybody at the door.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. And by the way, to be clear, you also don't even know if there's one shooter. So they were focused on the area that they had heard the gunshots. But when you're deciding it's no longer an active shooter, how do you know there's only one shooter? Columbine had more than one shooter. A lot of these mass shootings have more than one shooter. So It's just mind-boggling. And to me, something doesn't smell right here, that this is just really, really bad policing or a really, really disastrous decision to determine this is no longer an active shooting. Something smells like the police knew they fucked up or felt they fucked up in the beginning. And because of that, we're a lot more hesitant to further engage. Again, that's just my opinion. I don't have any backup for it. But you can't be this stupid as a police officer. Let's play the next one.
Hey, with the benefit of hindsight, stand by, hey, stand by, right? I got it. Okay. Hey, from the benefit of hindsight, where I'm sitting now, of course it was not the right decision. It was the wrong decision. Period. There's no excuse for that. But again, I wasn't there, but I'm just telling you, from what we know, we believe there should have been an entry at that as soon as you can. Hey, when there's an active shooter, the rules change. It's no longer, okay, it's no longer a barricaded subject. We don't have time. You don't worry about outer perimeters. And by the way, Texas embraces active shooter training, active shooter certification, and that doctrine requires officers, we don't care what agency you're from, you don't have to have a leader on the scene. Every officer lines up, stacks up, goes and finds where those rounds are being fired at and keeps shooting until the subject is dead, period.
And I wanted to address this. F the oligarch. Jordan, what you're saying doesn't make sense. Why would the cops just blindly shoot through the door? They could kill students. Well, I mean, you have a menu of bad options. You do nothing, and the shooter could then start shooting again at any minute. Or you start shooting, hoping to at least engage the shooter. So, I mean, the option is not to stand around for 45 minutes and not do anything. I get what you're saying. You could potentially shoot students, but by doing nothing, the shooter could start shooting again, which he did. You heard on the 911 calls. He immediately fired off 100 rounds in the beginning, and then later on, around 12:30, started firing again. This was as the police sat there, assuming it was no longer an active shooter situation. So you have a menu of bad options, but you can't just stand there and do nothing. And the active shooter protocol is to engage the shooter, meaning shoot. Let's play the next one, Colin.
He had Instagram, a 4-group chat, and it was discussed that Ramos being a school shooter. That was on February 28th of 2022. On March 1st of 2022, there was an Instagram he had with 4 people. It was a chat. He discussed him buying a gun. On March 3rd, 2022, there was another 4-person chat. Quotations, word on the street is you are buying a gun. Ramos replied, just bought something. RN. On March 14th, and there was an Instagram posting by the subject, in quotations, 10 more days. The user replied, are you going to shoot up school or something? The subject replied, no, and stop asking dumb questions and you'll see.
So 10 days before the shooting, he says 10 more days. And then when he's asked by whomever he was talking to in the Instagram chat, are you going to shoot up a school? He says no. That's a whole different discussion because obviously there were warning signs and private discussions on social media. I don't really know how you handle that. I'm not for social media companies, mass surveilling people's private conversations on social media. But clearly 10 days before, he said 10 more days. I don't know what that means. Does that mean 10 days? This was premeditated, that he was specifically planning this attack specifically on the school 10 days before? Don't know. Does it mean 10 more days? I'm planning on shooting my grandmother in 10 days? Who knows? But clearly 10 days before he did this, he was planning something. And you usually, you know, to pull off a shooting like this, you usually don't wake up that day to do it. You know, you usually have some planning beforehand. Obviously, he had some planning because on March 20th, he bought the AR-15. March 20th, he bought an AR-15, and I think March 23rd, he bought another one. But clearly, he previewed 10 days before. Sure, the NRA, Republicans will distract. We need to do more. If you see something, say something. If you hear something, say something. This is on the police. This is on the bystanders who didn't flag it to authorities. Yeah, you know, you could say that, but at the end of the day, people are imperfect. People are imperfect. People are going to miss signals. People might think, oh, they're just joking around. He's all, you know, he's huffing and puffing, but he would never go through with it. He's a paper tiger. What's not imperfect is AR-15s and 375 rounds. So I guarantee you, because the NRA convention is today, they are going to blame this on the police. They were good guys, but they were stupid guys. Make no mistake, this happened because the shooter had AR-15s and 375 rounds. This happened because a gun store owner there are no, legally, an 18-year-old in Texas, thanks to the governor who changed the age of purchase from 21 to 18, was able to go in, and a gun store owner didn't see any red flags that an 18-year-old on his birthday was buying AR-15s and this much ammunition, or did see red flags, but legally couldn't do anything. But for those that came in late, to me, the biggest thing here is these officers, this spokesperson right off the top. Let's just play it again for people that came in late. Colin, the first clip where he's saying the Border Patrol was part of the 19 officers that initially went in.
I'll need a minute to find it again.
That's fun. Yeah, we have a lot of clips. So, and keep smashing that like button, share this live stream. I will read super chats before I go. You know, I already see that the media is covering this mostly from the perspective of how badly the police responded, how the police are responsible for a lot of these deaths. I'm not saying that's not true, but let's also be clear. And if you don't agree with me, that's fine, but I'm going to say it because it's true. It wouldn't have mattered as much if the police had messed up, if the shooter had gone in with a knife, a couple knives, or some nunchucks. You're able to kill this many people this quickly because he had an AR-15 that had high ammunition magazines, 375 rounds. They're meant not for sport, not for hunting, but to kill as many people as quickly as possible. We have it?
Camera view, there's multiple shots fired at the school at 11:32, at 11:32:27, at 11:32:36. At 11:33 is when the suspect entered the school at the door that I'm pointing to now. At 11:33, the suspect begins shooting into room 111 or 112. It's not possible to determine from the video angle that we have at this point in time. We do know this, that he shot more than 100 rounds based on the audio evidence at that time, at least 100 rounds. He entered at 11:33, or 11:33, he started shooting in the classrooms, 111 and 112. And 11:35, 3 police officers entered the same door as the suspect entered. All 3 of those police officers worked for the Uvalde Police Department. They were later followed by another 4, a team of Uvalde police officers, 3, and also a county deputy sheriff. So a total of 7 officers were on the scene. The 3 initial police officers that arrived went directly to the door and 2 received grazing wounds at that time from the suspect while the door was closed. At 11:37, there was more gunfire. Another 16 rounds was fired at 11:37. One at 11:37 and 16 seconds, 11:38, 11:40, 11:44. At 11:51, a police sergeant and USB agents started to arrive. At 12:03, officers continued to arrive in the hallway, and there were as many as 19 officers at that time in that hallway. At 12:15, we know that BORTAC members arrived. Not the entire BORTAC, but members of BORTAC, along with Shields. At 12:21.
All right, so
the suspect fired again.
The 2 important things there are the shooter fired 100 rounds basically within the first few minutes of blocking the door and being in there. So that's the important part. It's very likely that most of the kids who died either died right away or were initially shot right away, and took a little while to bleed out. So that's why it's the guns. Okay, even if the cops did everything right, the majority of the shots were fired right away at these poor children. The second important part, again, is he's saying the Border Patrol showed up at 12:15. Which he then contradicts in the next clip. Let's play that again.
Play that same clip or a different clip? Sorry.
Just going in reverse, playing the second clip again.
Okay, I'll need a minute to find that as well.
Yeah, that's fine. So, to me, and to be clear, because we have a really messed up media system, this is likely to be out of the news probably in 4 or 5 days. Make no mistake. Keep this recorded. It's Friday. My guess is they'll move on by Wednesday. But make no mistake, and I want to be very abundantly clear about this. We should be outraged that the police clearly, if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, messed up. If you want to go further and say chickened out, seems like that a lot was going on based on statements from officers there who said, well, we could have been shot. Yeah, you could have been shot. But they sure don't hesitate like they did here when killing unarmed black men. Now, do they? They sure don't hesitate like they do in New York City. They don't hesitate in New York City when they attack poor people who jump over the subway turnstile. So seems like the only time they hesitate is when it's a mass shooter. Anything else? Shoot first, ask questions later. But I really fear that the media coverage, I don't fear it, it's already happening, is exclusively going to be about how horrible the police response was. That should definitely be part of the coverage. But the issue is the gun, not the mental health. As I've said over and over again, mental health problems are a real thing. I've suffered with depression most of my life. This mental health situation is getting worse in this country. Governor Abbott can crow all he wants about mental health. Governor Abbott in Texas cut funding for mental health. And Republicans, if they get power, would cut funding for mental health. And Democrats who pretend to be, on the side of us, they're not for Medicare for all, which would widely expand mental health services in this country. So they're all liars. Republicans, Democrats, all the same. They're both corrupt. They're both bought off in different ways. But the bottom line is, you can't eradicate mental health problems. There's always going to be people with depression, anxiety, other mental health issues. Even in a perfect utopia where our government wasn't corrupt, and let's say we had a 3 to 4 day work week and there was no poverty, you're still going to have people with mental health. You also have reporting that this shooter had been bullied in middle school and high school. So the difference is, and by the way, other countries have mental health problems. Difference is, other countries, people with mental illness don't have such easy access to bazooka guns that military officials say have no place in the hands of civilians. You got that clip, Colin?
The Border Patrol agents, the BORTAC agents that were in the building, did line up. They're part of the 19 that I talked about, and the entry team, ultimately the entry team that went in. But I can tell you that they were told, just as any other officer was told, and others, even command staff that came on board, is that the incident commander at the time it's believed that in fact it was a barricaded subject, that we had time, there was no kids at risk.
So again, he's either lying or he's contradicting himself, because first he said Border Patrol showed up at 12:15, which would have been about 45 minutes after the shooter had initially fired off 100 rounds. Then he says Border Patrol was part of the initial 19 officers that went in. Border Patrol that has the specialized equipment to try and ram through that door. Do we have the third clip, Colin, or you need to find that again?
Yeah, I need to find that.
That's fine. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know where to start. And yes, a lot of us have been bullied. I mean, when I was younger, I felt isolated for various reasons. So, yeah, you could say this guy wasn't mentally ill. He's a psychopath. Clearly, there was psychopathy here. But at the end of the day, the mental health and the societal rot, which is a lot of the excuses Republicans make, even some kind of on the left, say, yeah, let's not just focus on the guns. Let's focus on root issues. Sure, you could focus on root issues till we're blue in the face. But this is an emergency. You have children being massacred in schools. Let's not forget, 12 people were just killed in Buffalo, 10 of whom were black in a white supremacist attack. If this shooting didn't happen, remember, before this shooting happened on Tuesday, the Buffalo massacre was already out of the news, because we live in a sick fucking country where our media is corrupt. Our media doesn't actually give a damn about this. They cover it because it's the urgency of now. In most countries, if there was mass shootings like this, in most countries, if 10 people were massacred in Buffalo, 10 of whom were black, I believe 12 in total, that would be covered for weeks, if not months, because it's not a normal event that's supposed to be, oh, you cover it for a few days and then move on. And when the media covers these, specifically CNN, MSNBC, it's mostly a play-by-play, a focus on the shooter, a focus on the play-by-play, the timeline. And in this case, obviously the timeline really matters because the police badly fucked up. You don't see as much coverage on the actual issue here, the guns. The fiercest reporter I've seen challenging a politician, and I'm sorry we don't have the clip, was a Sky News reporter, which is shocking since it's owned by Rupert Murdoch. But a Sky News reporter from another country challenged Ted Cruz, that miscreant, on the obvious, the guns. I don't see many reporters from America challenging Governor Abbott, Ted Cruz, even Biden. And by the way, let's not only focus on the Republicans, because to be clear, the Democrats play a role here. They might be before banning these AR-15s. They might be for that. They might be for banning high-capacity magazines. They might be for closing the gun show loophole, closing internet sales, or at least putting regulation on it. But it doesn't matter if you're for it if you're not willing to go to the mat. You know, a viewer yesterday left me a voicemail, saying, oh, are you a fucking idiot? Biden can't end the filibuster. I know he can't unilaterally end the filibuster, but I don't know. Is Joe Biden a janitor, or is he president of the United States who has the bully pulpit to literally publicly go on a crusade against Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema and publicly tar and feather those two senators until they vote to end the filibuster, to, without Republicans, pass a ban on AR-15s, pass restrictions on high capacity magazines. Could he do that? Yes. Do people want someone who's actually going to fight? Yes. Will he do that? No. Why? Is it because he's corrupt? He is corrupt. Is it because his donors don't want him to end the filibuster? Because the filibuster is what allows us to keep the status quo for the donors? Because we live in the United Corporations of America? Yes. That's why they don't want to remove the filibuster. Because the real powers in America are not the politicians. It's their bosses, the donors. That's what's going on here. That's what that flag means. The donors, the United Corporations of America, not just the NRA, all of the special interests like the filibuster. Because what the filibuster allows is for the only legislation to pass be basically not actually changing the main meal, just kind of tinkering with the side dishes here and there. And occasionally throwing in a bipartisan deal, which usually a bipartisan deal means we're fucking you. So Biden has not unilateral power to end the filibuster, but he certainly has power to use his office to go on a goddamn crusade to save children. Not just children, adults. Adults have died at Aurora in movie theaters. Adults died at the concert in Las Vegas where 58 people got killed and not a goddamn thing happened. Adults just died in Buffalo. At churches. So don't let Democrats gaslight you. What we got to do is just vote in November and get more Democrats in there. Well, unless you have a Senate with a supermajority where Democrats have enough votes, even if you get no Republicans, meaning Republicans can't filibuster, which they're not going to have. And even if they had a supermajority, do we really trust the Democratic Party to have to produce all the votes? You got that clip, Colin?
There was 19, like I said, there was 19 officers in there. In fact, there was plenty of officers to do whatever needed to be done, with one exception, is that the incident commander inside believed they needed more equipment and more officers to do a tactical breach at that point. That's why board tack was requested on the scene as soon as they were there. They executed, they searched, or at least a dynamic entry, and went in. And of course, that was not till 12:57.
So there you go. He initially said the shooter fires off 100 rounds, but Border Patrol didn't show up till 12:15. Border Patrol has the specialized equipment to get through that door. Then he says there were 19 officers that went in initially, and Border Patrol was part of the 19 that initially went in. That would have been between 11:30 and 11:40. So either they showed up at 12:15 or they were there as part of the initial 19 officers. And he later said, we were waiting on Border Patrol, and when they showed up, that's when we barged through the door at 12:57. So either he's lying or he can't get his story straight. Might be a mixture of both. I don't know. But somehow, parents who, including some who were handcuffed by the police outside for the crime of trying to get in there to save their children, somehow some parents jumped over the fence, got in there, and rescued their children. Now, to be clear, even if the police did everything right and immediately tried to attack that door, shooting, forming a stack, trying to barge through the door, there would have been a significant number of innocent children that died. And also the 2 teachers. Let's not forget them. You still were going to have a lot of death, but could there have been some students that were saved? Yes. Colin, come on for a second. So you live in Texas. So, you know, good guys with a gun, all that jazz. You had Governor Abbott a couple years ago whining on Twitter that, hey, come on, speed it up, Texans. We fell behind. California's passed us in gun sales. We need to go back to number one. You have Abbott now crowing about mental health issues and not enough funding for mental health and not enough beds, even though he cut funding as governor for mental health. Not a word about guns by any of them. The usual crying that, if you talk about guns, you're politicizing the issue, even though political decisions are leaving these kids dead. What are your thoughts? Because this is your state.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
and also, am I in the twilight zone, or did that spokesperson contradicting himself at least 4 or 5 times about when Border Patrol showed up?
Yeah, well, obviously he contradicted himself several times in like watching the speech. He looked almost like someone who's unsure also of what they're saying, whether that's because he is unsure or because he knows what he's saying is not 100% true. Like you said, we don't know. But yeah, I mean, with Texas, it's one of those that, like you've talked about before, open carry. So when I go out and stuff, you'll often see people just out in regular places, just with their pistol hanging out and stuff like that. So there's already people are already desensitized, I feel like, here in Texas to guns and possibly gun violence and stuff like that. So I don't know how this might affect people, but I mean, something like this has to, well, you think would have to affect people, but there's definitely an indifference among some people.
You know why I think that nothing's going to change, unfortunately? Because my strong guess is by Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, the media will not be covering this anymore. Or they'll be kind of covering it like later in the show, but not like they are now. The media is going to move on from this because, frankly, the media doesn't actually want to cover what the actual story is. And I don't really give a shit if I piss people off. If you don't agree, that's fine. The actual story here, sure, you have the police badly fucked up. Whether it was just terrible decisions or maybe they fucked up in the beginning, who knows? I mean, just speculation. Maybe they fucked up in the beginning. Maybe they accidentally shot kids. I don't know. The issue is not just that the police fucked up. The issue is, and I wish I had the tweet, Nina Turner tweeted this the other day, listing like 15 mass shootings, and every one of them was an AR-15. I don't own a gun. I went shooting once at a bachelor party. It's not my thing. I got nothing against people who like guns, people who want a handgun or something like that at home, people that, I've been to Texas and elsewhere that hunt for sport. Nothing against it. There's nothing wrong with owning guns. There is something wrong when you literally have the military officials, because Republicans love the military, wave the flag. But what kind of bachelor party? It wasn't mine. When the military says there's no reason that these weapons should be in civilian hands, that these weapons are literally meant to kill as many people as humanly possible. You cannot kill 19 school children. You cannot fire off 100 rounds if you don't have high-capacity magazines, AR-15s, or weapons that are similar to AR-15s. Also, this governor changed the law from 21 to 18 to buy a gun. Also, why did the gun store owner not find it kind of suspect that on his 18th birthday, Salvador Ramos came out to buy an AR-15 and in over a couple days bought 375 rounds. 375 rounds. That should be a fucking blinking red light flag. And you want to know something? Ty and I were talking about this yesterday, and I was talking to my wife about it. Tell you the truth, I thought to myself, you know what? The truth is, I don't think these politicians will act unless it was their kid that got killed by an AR-15. But to be honest, I'm not even clear that would make them act, because I think the Republican Party has become so extreme and so corrupt and so immersed in just, it's not even only about the guns, just the fear complex of just scaring the living shit out of people so that they could stay in power, because they're able to scare the living shit out of people that the liberals are coming for your guns, blah, 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 blah. Remember, Obama was going to come for all your guns. And that helps distract the masses from, oh, yeah, these Republicans are actually fucking you economically. They're giving massive tax breaks to their donors and rich people. They're not doing anything for you. They're bought off. They're allowing rent to go up. In Texas, rent is going up just like everywhere else, 30, 40%, because Republicans are bought off. On the other side, you got Democrats who might be better on the issue, but aren't going to do a goddamn thing to fight for it. When they had a near supermajority under Obama, didn't do anything. When Obama was president and 20 school children died in Newtown, what did he do? Cried. Well, you could say, well, Jordan, Republicans at that point held the majority, held Congress. So that doesn't mean that. So that means don't try, don't fight for it, don't barnstorm the country, shaming every last Republican for not doing anything, don't using the bully pulpit of the presidency. Obama did none of that. Nobody is expecting politicians to be perfect. We're expecting you to fight for the goddamn things that are necessary. And right now, there is an emergency in this country, because make no mistake, there will be another mass shooting. It might not be at a school. It might be at a concert. It might be at a grocery store. It might be at a sporting event. Who knows? But you want to know what's not going to happen today? There will be no shooting at the NRA convention. You want to know why? Because they're not allowing guns in when President Trump speaks. They're not allowing guns in the building because President Trump is speaking. Doesn't that say it all? Let me read some super chats. Lana Del hates the clock, $20. So glad for your coverage, Jordan. Would like to point out that mental health is included in Medicare for all. Absolutely. Please, let's keep fighting on all fronts for people who need mental health services. My son has mental health issues. Absolutely. Like I said, mental health is a real thing. It's too often stigmatized in this country. But the fact is, we're never going to eradicate all mental health issues. We can make it way fucking harder for weapons of war to get into the hands of mentally ill people. That's the issue. Not mental illness itself, but guns. Emily, 1999. Can we just be honest and all admit they were scared of the weapons? Yeah. We don't need to admit it. One of the officers admitted it, that they didn't want to get shot. Absolutely. Thanks for the super chat. Miss Best, $5. Thank you for your coverage of this nightmare. Absolutely. Woodrow, $5. So make mass data collection illegal. It apparently does not work. What is there left to argue? Instagram, Facebook, whoever, it did not work. Yeah, I don't think there's an easy solution to this, because I'm 100% against social media platforms surveilling private messages or users' private data. I don't know the answer. And by the way, they're already doing it. I don't know the answer, but the fact is the shooter said 10 more days, 10 days before he did this in a private Instagram chat. Truth Bear, $5. Obama didn't even do anything when Democrats had a filibuster-proof Senate. Shows me that they want to keep this issue alive at expensive lives. You said it. Certain issues help rally the base, and you need to give them some issues to vote on, because you're certainly not giving them any fucking economic help to vote for you. Obviously, we'll stay on this story as developments come. If we need to go live this weekend, we'll go live this weekend. Thank you. AR-15 equals WMD. We also might have some footage from the NRA convention. We have a freelance video journalist is down there, so if stuff pops from there, We'll try to get that turned around. A little bit later, possibly around 5:30, 6 o'clock, I'll have an interview with the Green Party candidate for governor of Texas. There is a candidate running on the Green Party for governor of Texas. She has strong words for the Texas governor and the Democratic nominee, Beto O'Rourke. So we'll have that interview possibly around 5:30, 6 o'clock Eastern. To make sure you get a text message when we're live, join our text list, statuscoup.com/text. YouTube often does not notify people when we're live. So you could join our text message to make sure you get a text message when we're live. And also, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. We appreciate. We not only report from a studio, but we also get out in the field and cover things. So we appreciate all of you, the super chats. And if you want to support this channel, support us as a Status Coup member, statuscoup.com/join. You can become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. We did have an independent journalist out there in the beginning of this covering it. He actually challenged Beto O'Rourke. That clip is up on the channel. He also interviewed another politician down there, as well as residents. So we had somebody on the ground there. We also will have footage probably this weekend from a rally in Buffalo covering that carnage, which has already fallen out of the news cycle. So we're on the ground in addition to the studio. It costs money. There's a lot of outlets that beg you for money, but are just pontificating from a studio. We actually get out there on the ground. It costs money to do that. We don't take any money from the bankers, the fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, the military industrial complex. Our funding comes from you. So if you can support us, consider signing up for as low as $5 to $10 a month. That's statuscoup.com/join. And as a member, you get to join our monthly members call through Zoom. We just had our monthly members call, so we'll do another one next month. We have a Discord channel for our members and behind the scenes videos for our members. So we like to give you perks, and you could check out if you want to don the Status Coup swag. You could go to statuscoup.com/store. That's statuscoup.com/store, where you could get our United Corporations of America shirt, our Fossil Fuckers shirt, and some other swag we have for the summer. Get it now, statuscoup.com/store. Thank you for watching. And also, let's just remember, at the end of the day, this is about 21 people who died, including 19 children. That's not normal. Not normal. You can't have a representative government that's supposedly representative democracy that does nothing after children continually are massacred. That's no longer a country if we're going to allow children to be massacred. Thank you for watching. Again, we will have an interview with the Green Party candidate for Texas governor around 5:30, 6 o'clock. If you get on our text list, you'll get a text when we have that. That's statuscoup.com/text. Take care.